swimmer currently shows front crawl with lateral breathing, but you may notice the arm strokes and body position losing structure over distances of 15 meters or so. First, look at the head position. It should be still and relaxed. Here we notice that it's too low with the face looking down. This results in a higher lift during breathing, followed by a further sinking. The head position therefore affects the stroke and body position. The opposite is when the head position is high and the face looking forward. The body sinks and there is a lot of pressure on the core of this young swimmer to breathe. We can see she pushes to lift the head out of the water. The third position you may notice is a swinging head. This can cause over-rotation in the hips, especially when breathing. If you ever notice a swimmer twisting or snaking during front crawl, it could be due to this. Just by mentioning to a swimmer the importance and effects the head has on the stroke can often be all it takes to improve. Ask the swimmer to keep their head still, relaxed, and looking at the bottom of the pool a couple of meters in front of them. Now that Laura is improving her head position, we need to look at the body position during the stroke. We must remember that the stroke, and more importantly breathing in front crawl, is generated by the hips, not the shoulder turning or the head turning. Here are some excellent progression drills to encourage hip turning and length of stroke. When revisiting those 4 drills of the progression, also try swimming 2 strokes per arm or even 3 or 4. This encourages long arm strokes and a reaching hand. Corkscrew swimming also does this, with the added emphasis on hip movement. It's also great fun and swimmers can rotate every 3, 5 or 7 strokes. To look at the stroke in more detail, we have a more advanced swimmer demonstrating. For excellent identification of a swimmer's catch, pull and recovery, have them demonstrate in shoulder depth water. It is important their feet are planted on the floor, bent knees if needed, so that their shoulders remain constantly just below the surface. This is the same position we used for practicing lateral breathing, which can be revisited before moving the arms. Have the swimmer perform the arm strokes either breathing, holding the breath, or even with their head out of the water for communication purposes. By practicing at the wall or with a float, a swimmer becomes more accustomed to the start and end of the stroke, which is out in front of them. The second step is to alternate arms, emphasizing that the non-stroking arm reaches forward at all times. Under the water, we notice that Flora bends her elbow at the beginning of the stroke and pushes the water back. This is generally called the pull of the stroke and the bit which moves the swimmer forward. However, getting the most out of a swimmer's stroke is vital. Looking closer, we can see that the catch, or the beginning of the pull, is when the hand and forearm face back. In this case, it is here. The stroke is cut short, as the elbow exits the water too early. In this case, Flora's stroke length is about 80 centimeters. To create the longest, most effective stroke, the hand must reach forward and catch far earlier and further in front. Hence the importance of stretching the recovery arm forward. During the pull, the hand and forearm push the water back. Note there is no bent wrist, as the propulsion is the hand and the forearm. During this example, by pausing at the end, Flora finishes the stroke and increases her stroke length to around 120 centimeters. By having the swimmer isolating this action and performing it slowly, they can feel the full movement. The recovery should be instigated by the elbow rather than the hand, in a relaxed motion. Flora's recovery is a little tense here due to the hips remaining still for this practice. Usually, when doing the stroke, the hips rotate, opening up the shoulder and enabling a more relaxed recovery. As just mentioned, the hand and the forearm act as the paddle. Underwater we can see the power of the pull. It should be a fluid acceleration after the catch. By standing behind the swimmer, we can feel the effect of the pull. Encourage a stronger and more powerful finish, and always remind them to end the stroke. Moving on to practicing the developing stroke, I like one arm swimming with the recovery arm sliding under the stretched leading arm. This can be more beneficial than the sometimes slapping effect of the common catch-up drill. Kids can imagine a plane landing on a runway to get a nice entry and high elbow. The single arm drill can be progressed to both arms, still maintaining a leading hand. The sliding hand drill can then move on to the swapping hand drill. The swimmer will notice how the extended reaching forces the hips to rotate better. The swimmer must remember to keep the head still. There are also many practices for improving the recovery, ranging from waving hand, aimed at loosening and relaxing the arms on recovery. Also, by touching a body part in recovery, the swimmer can learn to maintain a high elbow. Although there are many recovery drills, it should be noted that at this stage it is more important to concentrate on what is happening under the water rather than above. Now for the front crawl recap at this level. Up to this stage we have viewed our hands and forearms as paddles, pushing the water back. However, there is another way to think about our stroke. The hands are anchors rather than paddles. Once the hand enters the water, the fingers should point down, grab hold of the water, and imagine pulling your body past your hand rather than pushing your hand back. Try to keep the elbow high during the push phase. During recovery, relax the arm and enter far in front of you with a high shoulder and elbow. At the end of the recovery, reach for the water, which is just out of reach. Throughout the reach and pull phase, your hips will turn, which is the basis of good front crawl, as swimming flat increases drag and shortens the stroke. Throughout the levels, our swimmers continue to practice breathing, which should always be relaxed. Let's now look at the different ways we exhale underwater. A few swimmers exhale through their nose. However, it is preferable to practice using the mouth or a combination of mouth and nose, as continually inhaling and exhaling through different points makes it difficult to regulate the breathing. Generally, there are two sorts of exhaling. The first is trickle breathing, which is a continuous flow of air. The second sort of breathing is explosive exhaling, which in essence is breathing out when you turn or come up to inhale. I personally prefer this, as a swimmer tends to blow out the same amount that they take in, making breathing regulation easier. Practice both, and when you find whichever method suits you, swimming becomes a whole lot easier. Practicing all the previous stroke drills in this level while breathing on both the left and the right should enable you to breathe on both sides, also known as bilateral breathing. Remember, bilateral breathing should not be used to balance a stroke. With correct body position and breathing, the body should not need balancing.